You are listening to KLRN Radio, where liberty and reason still reign.
At the LASIK Vision Institute, we know LASIK is a big decision, and every one of our patients is unique. That's why we customize your LASIK journey to you.
I only have a certain budget.
No problem. Right now at the LASIK Vision Institute, get 20% off LASIK when treated in April. That can be over $900 off when treating both eyes, plus guaranteed financing options. So visit GetLVILASIK.com today to start your journey towards 20/20 vision. Must mention this promotion and be treated in April of 2024 to qualify. 20% off standard price of Wave Light procedure. Cannot be combined with any other offers. Go to GetLVILASIK.com for details. At the LASIK Vision Institute, we know LASIK is a big decision, and every one of our patients is unique. That's why we customize your LASIK journey to you.
I'm so busy right now.
We offer a mix of convenient days and times, including 30-minute virtual appointments to fit your schedule.
I would love it, but I have astigmatism.
We treat thousands of patients with astigmatism every month with great outcomes. The LASIK Vision Institute is making your journey towards 20/20 vision all about you. So visit GetLVILASIK.com today to start your LASIK journey.
Hi, I'm Mike, founder of DollarShaveClub.com. What is DollarShaveClub.com? Well, for $1 a month, we send high-quality razors right to your door. Yeah, $1. Are the blades any good? No. Our blades are f***ing great. Each razor has stainless steel blades, an aloe vera lubricating strip, and a pivot head. It's so gentle a toddler could use it. And do you like spending $20 a month on brand name razors? 19 go to Roger Federer. I'm good at tennis. And do you think your razor needs a vibrating handle, a flashlight, a back scratcher, and 10 blades? Your handsome-ass grandfather had 1 blade and polio. Looking good, Pop-Up! Stop paying for shave tech you don't need. And stop forgetting to buy your blades every month. Alejandro and I are going to ship them right to you. We're not just selling razors, we're also making new jobs. Alejandro, what were you doing last month?
Not working.
What are you doing now?
Working.
I'm no Vanderbilt, but this train makes hay. So stop forgetting to buy your blades every month and start deciding where you're going to stack all those dollar bills I'm saving you. We are DollarShaveClub.com, and the party is on.
I know karate, I know jiu-jitsu, I drive like a gangster when I'm coming to see you, see you.
Hi, everyone. This is JJ, the co-founder of Good Pods. If you haven't heard of it yet, Good Pods is like Goodreads or Instagram, but for podcasts. It's new, it's social, it's different, and it's growing really fast. There are more than 2 million podcasts, and we know that it is impossible to figure out what to listen to. On Good Pods, you follow your friends and podcasters to see what they like. That is the #1 way to discover new shows and episodes. You can find Good Pods on the web or download the app. Happy listening.
Ready to stand out, Army ROTC prepares you not only as a college student, but as a strong leader, allowing you to earn the rank of second lieutenant. You will be eligible for full tuition merit-based scholarships and develop leadership skills essential for your future. Start strong and enhance your college experience. Visit your campus Army ROTC representative today. To find out how you can earn up to a full tuition scholarship, visit goarmy.com/podcast to locate your closest ROTC program today. Army officers inspire, strengthen others. Paid for by the United States Army.
Not to be a backseat driver, but can you say for sure you got the best monthly payment possible on your auto loan? Could it be that you might have gotten a better deal by shopping the loan at a few places and have a lower car payment? Next time, before you go car shopping, visit Communication Federal Credit Union first. Our auto loan experts will find you a perfect loan and get you the lowest monthly payment we can. Communication Federal, your auto loan experts. Restrictions apply. Federally insured by NCUA.
The following program contains coarse language and adult themes. Listener discretion is advised.
So this girl's out back behind the bar. She's a good girl. She called a car. You got 3 motherfuckers and a big white van. 2 dumb friends and 1 mean man. Well, she'll fucking kill you. She wins every fight. She's gonna rock your shit by the end of the night. And the only advantage that a killer has is they think they have the right. I listen to watch you cry. I listen to it at night.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Rick Robinson, Programming Director here at KLRN Radio. Without further ado, our premiere episode of Talk Murder to Me with the one, the only, well, the two only, Laura and Aggie. Good evening, ladies. It's all you.
Hey, guys. I'm very nervous, so y'all just bear with me.
We got you.
You can do that.
We
It's
got you.
fun.
You can do this. It's no different than toxic. Just breathe and have fun.
Well, yeah, tonight I'm going to be taking everybody back 102 years into 1922 Germany. It's a small Bavarian farm about 43 miles outside of Munich, Germany. It's just a little farmstead, a house, a barn, the land, all of that, just to kind of give you a general setting for our story.
It sounds rather interesting. I mean, considering how far away and how long ago the incident took place.
Yeah, it's not surprising that this one's unsolved, but this is one of the more, and eerie is the only word I can think of to come up with it. It's a very eerie story because, okay, even you guys in the chat, like, do y'all know what frogging is? And that's frogging with a PH and not an F.
I don't think they know.
I say that's a term for it, but it's when somebody basically invades your house, you know, against your will and without your knowledge at all. You have no idea that they're even living in your house. They just kind of live there and do their own thing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you're old enough to remember, but there were several movies back in the late 70s and early 80s that was a very frequent theme. And I remember watching one with Gary Busey, and I was like, oh my God, this guy is so creepy. And of course, I adore him now, but not then.
I mean, it's absolutely terrifying, the idea that somebody can be in your home and you don't know about it. I mean, okay, we'll just kind of dive into it real quick. There was a maid who worked at the home who quit because she was telling everybody that she believed the house was haunted. And she only quit 6 months before the murders occurred. But the family reported hearing footsteps in their attic. There was even accounts that, who was it? It was Gruber. Andreas Gruber he's like the patriarch of the family. And even he said, like just days before the murders happened, he told his neighbors that he found tracks in the snow that led from the forest that their house kind of butted up against, that their land and everything was against. From the forest to a door in the farm's machine room where the lock was broken, but there were no footsteps coming out of that room.
That is beyond creepy.
Yeah, the family that we're going to talk about is the Hinterkaifeck murders is what we're going to be talking about, but the family's names, Andreas Gruber, he was the husband and, you know, the patriarch of the family. His wife was Kazelia, and I'm probably butchering these names because I'm not good with German. But Kazelia was the wife. They had a daughter who actually at the time of the murders was about my age. She was 35 years old. Her name was Victoria Gabriel. She had been widowed, and I'll kind of get more into that in a minute because her husband was actually listed as one of the suspects for a little bit. But she had two children. One was, the oldest daughter was also Kazelia. She was 7 years old. And then she had a son, Joseph, who was only 2 at the time. And they did hire a new maid, Maria Baumgartner. But, okay, think about this. What is the worst first day at work you have ever had in your life? Like, just kind of picture that in your mind. Okay, well, this woman, Maria, it was her first day on March 31st, 1922, the day of the murders. It was her first day on the job. And she's killed alongside the rest of the other 5 members of the family.
So, your boss being mean is pales in comparison.
But yeah, She had never experienced any of the.
She was brand new. She hadn't been there a day, so she didn't know. My guess is that no one told her either.
Yeah, I assume not. I mean, because it's such an old case, there's very little, like, kind of witness testimony or anything about this. So there's just a lot of speculation about it.
Yeah, I think the only thing that they would have was the hearsay from the neighbors from what Andreas Gruber had told the neighbors of what he had witnessed, and which was, from what I read, was very few, because a farm doesn't have a next door neighbor, so to speak. They just
they had no like nearby neighbors like you're thinking of.
Yeah,
I mean, they had people close enough to see the lights of their house and everything, but that was about it.
Yeah,
but I know Andreas also. He had found a newspaper on his property during that same month. There's not really a date that he found it, but he found this newspaper that he didn't remember buying, and he actually initially just first thought that the mailman, the postman, made a mistake and accidentally delivered it, but none of his neighbors subscribed to that newspaper either. So they have absolutely no idea where that newspaper came from.
Which is kind of weird, because when you think about it, back then, it's not like our, mailing today, where, you get all your circulars and your catalogs and all that stuff. A newspaper was actually not a common day thing that most people would buy. It tended to be a little bit on the expensive side. So not a lot of people could afford to have a newspaper be delivered to them frequently. So, when I read that, I was like, whoa, a newspaper? What?
And typically, I mean, if they can't afford it for a subscription and everything, they're not going to buy something that's not local to them.
Nope. Considering, I lived in Germany for a time, and I know expat did too. And over there, anything 25 kilometers away, you spend the night. So these people were like farther than that from Munich, and there was no reason to have a Munich newspaper. So,
43 miles outside of Munich. So that's very odd that newspaper would turn up on their property and nobody could explain it. But that's even more terrifying because whoever was staying in their home got it from somewhere, and so obviously they were kind of traveling back and forth.
Yeah, that was my first inkling, was that this was a traveler of some sort. And I don't use the term traveler as in someone who's traveled, but in more of the Irish sense of travelers. Somebody that, the gypsy type. So that kind of struck me. But yeah, when I read about the newspaper, I was kind of like, that was a big red flag.
I mean, that's something I wondered about too, because it obviously was still very, very cold. So if this was just somebody that they didn't know and that was just, kind of invading their home, they were probably doing it to find, shelter from the freezing cold. But there's still, to this day, no real suspects. But, we'll just dive in real quick to the actual details of the murders. It happened on March 31st of 1922. And every single one of the family members, and plus the maid, so all of them, were murdered with what's called a mattock, or, a pickaxe, kind of what we would call it today. None of their neighbors, nothing. No one had realized what happened for 4 days. But it was Andreas, his wife Kazilia, Victoria, and Victoria's oldest child, her child Kazilia, the 7-year-old. They were all lured out to the barn, and that's where they were killed. The maid, Maria, and Joseph, the little one, the 2-year-old, they were murdered inside the home. But, nobody realized this for 4 days. The livestock was still cared for because neighbors said that they saw the cows going to and from the barn. They saw smoke coming from the chimney, and light was seen from the house at night. So this person stayed in the house after they slaughtered this entire family, and very brutally, because a pickaxe murder is not pretty. But when police investigated too, there was evidence that someone had even recently eaten food in the house. So they lived in the home, but performed, the daily tasks like preparing meals and maintaining the farm. But the youngest daughter, which is the most heartbreaking for me, little Casilia, she did not die immediately because there was evidence. They saw bloody fingerprints on her neck where she had tried to hold a wound, I guess. She was so terrified inside that barn because keep in mind, she was in there with her mother, her grandparents, and they were all dead. She watched them all murdered. And there was evidence that she actually ripped out clumps of her own hair.
I can't even imagine what she must have witnessed, really. It's one thing for an adult to see it. It's quite another for a 7-year-old.
Yeah, I mean, that's why cases like this get me because, we're moms, so our gut instinct is to protect our children and everything. So I think that the girl probably was attacked last because if she had been attacked first, I think any one of the adults in there would have done something, would have at least tried. There would have been a great, great struggle, I think.
Yeah, it seems like they were methodical in removing the bigger threats first and then, completing the job with the lesser threats. Because I believe the maid was killed in her bed while she slept, as was the youngest child.
I think she was found in the floor next to her bed.
Okay.
So I don't know if she had tried to get out of bed or something, or if the attack just was so brutal that it pulled her out of her bed. But her and little Joseph, they were the only two that were killed inside the house. They think there was evidence, at least for police, that they thought that Andreas, his wife, and, the child's mother and everything, they were all lured out to the barn somehow. But there's no real details on, how that would have happened.
The only thing that I could imagine, it being 1922, it being a remote farm, there must have, I think something necessary for the evening meal or whatever was removed from the house that necessitated them or one of them to go get it in the barn. Like maybe, fresh milk or, something to that effect. And
Right.
so,
And that
one
would
would
be easier
go and they wouldn't return. So the other one would go check. They didn't return. So you know what I'm saying? That's the only
Right.
thing that can make it work in my head. But
There was a theory that it might have been, more than one culprit doing the murders, but they never really found any evidence for that. So I do think that kind of luring them out there somehow one by one, that's the only way that they could have got by with that.
yeah, that's pretty much where my brain is at, really. I mean, I started reading this when you gave me homework. So I was reading about it.
It'd be a test, but I might give you homework.
Yeah, and I'm good with that. I like the homework. But this was, like we said, it was extremely unusual because the perpetrator or whoever it was that committed the crimes actually stayed there for days and tended the farm animals and cooked and, did all that stuff. But robbery was not the motive.
No, to my knowledge, there was nothing of value missing from the house. Nothing like that.
The money was there. The jewelry, was there. The cattle was left fine. I mean, it was actually tended, not left to starve.
Yeah.
So that it kind, that alone, there takes away from motive. I mean, you're left with
Motive had to be, at least for this, if it's not random, it had to be personal of some kind, because the only way somebody close to you can actually be that brutal and violent is if they know you and if you've angered them or upset them or hurt them somehow.
which is, I guess, as we're talking murder to each other, the ex-husband comes in because it was not
Carl Gabriel was one of the suspects. He was the husband of Victoria, who was widowed before him. Well, no, that was actually the husband that died. He died in December of 1914, I think, in France in World War I.
Okay. Right.
But he was reported as being killed there. And so there's kind of that wild theory, since the body never came home, was like, well, maybe he didn't actually die.
Which is a possibility, because there have been reports of, KIAs or MIAs during World War I where they actually came back like several years later because they had suffered from amnesia, or they had been taken prisoner somewhere else, or there was one guy who decided to reinvent his life completely, and moved to America. So you never know.
Yeah, the fact, though, that he never turned up anywhere after that kind of leads me to believe that he probably actually was killed in the war. So I doubt there was really any validity to that. But they liked him as a suspect because she actually conceived and gave birth to Joseph when he was either already in the war or had already died. So Joseph was not his son at all, and it was rumored that he was the product of an incestuous relationship between Victoria and her father Andreas. So they said that that's why he killed the entire family, but I would say it doesn't make sense that he killed Joseph, because Joseph was kind of innocent and all that, but if he hated Joseph that much for not being his and for being the product of incest, that would fit as a motive.
True. But then, most people who tend to kill for that particular motive would not kill the innocents, like the daughter, the maid. They had nothing to do with the incest. The mom, maybe if she, let it slide. But definitely, from what I've seen of cases where incest was the motive, it was usually the perpetrator of the incest that got killed, and that was it.
Yeah,
the rage was targeted to that person.
Attack innocence.
Yeah. So,
but there were a lot of other suspects that, were named and everything, but some of them make a little more sense than others do. There was one man, Lorenz Schlittenbauer, I think is how you pronounce that. And it was short after the death of his wife in 1918. He was kind of rumored to have had a relationship with Victoria too, and he was the one that fathered Joseph. So he came under suspicion early on, and this one makes more sense to me because of his activity right after the discovery of the bodies, because he asked some of his friends to go with him to investigate and see what had happened, because nobody had heard from the family in a few days. Now, he unlocked the front door. He had a key. So he unlocked the front door, entered the house by himself. His friends did not go in. So he was completely alone when he discovered the bodies of the maid and Joseph. But what's even more interesting about that is Andreas had actually reported that some of his house keys had turned up missing a few days before.
Very interesting. So that's like a big flag too.
It really is. Keys turn up missing, and suddenly this guy rumored to have had a relationship with, the daughter. Now he's got a key somehow, and nobody can explain how he's got this key.
And from what I read, Schlittenbauer also, when he entered the house, he disturbed the bodies too.
Yes.
So he actually messed up the crime scene.
I say he might have been the reason the maid's body, Maria's body, was found outside of her bed. She might have been killed in her bed, but we don't know.
Yeah, and it's like the big question is like, outside of feeling, for a pulse, why would you mess with the bodies? I just,
Hey,
you know.
a pickaxe, that's going to be a bloody scene. Like, you
Yeah.
see that much blood and there's somebody in the room that's not moving. You've got a pretty good inkling that they're gone. They're dead.
Yeah, so that was kind of like, for me, another big red flag. I think that's probably the biggest red flag that I had reading on this stuff, because, I mean, it's just the keys. The keys that, you know, it is possible that he would have been given a key if he were, you know, close to Victoria and was the father of Joseph. But I don't know. I don't think so. If he were, then why wasn't she with Schlittenbauer? You know? So
I think there were rumors that he owed a lot in child support, first off. I mean, he was a suspect for a long time, even just among the locals, just because of how he would talk about the murders and everything. He seemed to have very intimate knowledge of what happened that night. That obviously, unless you were there, you're not going to know that thing, you know?
yeah, very true.
He also, it was reported that he would visit, after the house was demolished and everything, he would still go back and visit the site of the house, which is extremely common. Like, we know that nowadays, that it's very, very common for a killer to return to the scene of the crime. It's almost a way of reliving it for them.
Correct. Yeah, it's almost what did they call it? A reserved stimuli to act for a killer. They need to do that. It's almost like salmon swimming upstream. You know, it's kind of like, I don't know what we're doing this, but we're doing it.
There were also two brothers, the Gump brothers, Adolf Gump and where's his brother's name?
It's not Forrest.
Anton. Yeah, it's not Forrest. And it's not Bubba Gump either, so. But Adolf and Anton, they were listed as suspects. They were said to have participated in the murder of like 9 other farmers in another area, and during a fight during the Polish uprising and everything in 1921. And I think it was Adolf that had a warrant out for his arrest already at the time of these murders. But it was their sister. I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce her name. But she claimed on her deathbed that Adolf and Anton had committed the murders, had told her about it.
Yeah, her name was Crescentia.
Yeah, Anton was in police custody at that point. Like, they went ahead and arrested him, but Adolf had already died in 1944. So, but Anton was dismissed because they really had no evidence. I mean, it was just, they couldn't prove anything.
Yeah, and admittedly, it was on her deathbed, and Crescencia was probably thinking, you know, maybe she had an axe to grind, no pun intended, but there was nothing else to go on. Admittedly, their past activities with the Freikorps were very suspect, but
right,
it's one thing to actually go and commit murders, you know, against a specific group of people who are in Poland in a certain area that the Weimar Republic was trying to claim, versus some dude out in the middle of nowhere that you don't know.
Right. I mean, they had no real connection to the family. I mean, yeah, not stealing anything. There was, since we know robbery wasn't a motive, like, what possible reason could they have had? Unless it's like a thrill killing or something, then, you know, anything goes. But there were 2 others, too, a Carl S. and Andreas S. All we have are just the last initial there. But what I read was in 1971, a woman named Teresa T. had wrote a letter citing an event in her youth. So when she was 12, she witnessed her mother receiving a visit from the mother of the brothers, Carl and Andreas S. The woman claimed that her sons from Saddleburg were the two murderers of the Hinterkaifeck family. So the mother had said Andreas regretted that he lost his penknife, and they actually did find a knife, a little pocket knife, that they couldn't attribute to anybody, but it's entirely possible it belonged to one of the family members. I mean, that's an extremely common tool, so.
True.
I think even the former maid, when they had interviewed her, obviously, you know, because she left and got out before any of it happened, but she said that she had already seen a similar knife to that on the farm before the murders. So I think it's entirely likely that, you know, that woman probably was just being a little bit paranoid about her sons or something.
Which is possible.
Now, there was another one, a man named Peter Weber. He was named as a suspect by another man named Joseph Betts, who worked with him from 1919 to 1920. Betts said that Weber actually spoke of the Hinterkaifeck farm and the old couple that lived there with their daughters. Betts actually testified in a hearing that Weber suggested killing the old man to get the family's money. But again, you know, nothing of value was missing.
Yeah. So if they were going after the money, why not take it? I mean, if that was the motive, the money was still there. And it was a sizable amount from what I understood for 1922.
Yet they were a well-to-do family. I mean, it was a successful farm, so. But there are I don't know if we should really bother going into the other suspects because they're just as
flimsy.
They're just as unlikely as the rest of them. Yeah. I mean, my money, if it's on anybody, would be on Carl Gabriel.
I was going to say either Gabriel or Schlittenbauer.
Yeah.
Because of the fact that Schlittenbauer had the key to get into the house and disturb the bodies for some reason. There was no reason to disturb the bodies. I mean, even if you're trying to save someone and you see the blood and you see that they've been dead forever, I mean, you know, death had occurred 4 days previously. The bodies would show signs of that. There was no way they could still be.
So that would kind of slow down the process a little bit, but I mean, they're still going to be basically looking gray, and you're going to be able to look and tell.
These are farmers. They're used to seeing livestock die. They know what a dead cow or sheep or dog or goat or whatever looks like. You know, if it's gone missing for a few days and you find it, I mean, the bodies are bloated. It does not look salvageable. So when, you know, I was reading that he did disturb the bodies, I was like, there's no reason to. I mean, even if you're trying to save somebody, the first thing you do is you check for a pulse, you know? And so even back then, that was something that people did. But
I mean, these are not people unfamiliar with death at all.
Now, another telling thing was that the Schlittenbauer family is still around, and so is the Gabriel family. And I believe I want to say the Gump brothers there's still family that's connected to them and all that. And I want to say, what was it? One of the police academies, Polizeifachhochschule.
I'm just going to get you to say like all the foreign stuff for me now.
You know, they were given the case file, you know, as, you know, and there were students still at the police academy, and they were given the case file to review and see if they could solve it. And they believe that they did solve it, but they're not saying who they think committed the murders because they don't want to distress the descendants of that particular person or persons involved. So that's a big tell for me. But, in these areas, a lot of families, these farms are handed down generation after generation, and they've been around for hundreds of years in the same place. I personally know someone whose farm they have the deed in their office, and their deed says 1290.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is not unusual in Germany to have had families in the same spot for hundreds of years. So it does make you wonder, because they refuse to speculate the name out loud to save embarrassment of the descendants,
And we got to keep in mind that this was 1922. I mean, DNA evidence really wasn't a thing at all. Especially outside in a barn, it's probably very difficult to find like hair and fibers and stuff that wouldn't have just come from the family themselves. Or, just
back then, the
too.
process for fingerprinting was around, and it was effective, but that would mean that you would have to fingerprint other people outside of that. And, the chances were remote that the person that had done the deed was still around. But we come back to the whole, what's his name? Schlittenbauer.
Schlittenbauer, yeah.
Schlittenbauer, who had no reason to go inside the house, and yet now his fingerprints are on everything.
Yeah, I mean, even if I was the friends, just because they wouldn't have any idea of knowing whether or not the murderer was still in the house. Like, why would you let him go inside?
Right. Now, the whole thing about the incest was never actually proven, but that rumor did persist. And I think it still persists to this day, because it's still...
Yeah, that's still one of the more common theories about the family. But there's really no evidence that even if that were true, it might not necessarily be connected to the murders at all. Because, I mean, for all we know, even with Schlittenbauer being a great suspect and a logical suspect, we can't really discount the idea that this was a drifter of some kind.
True. And I think there was a gentleman who wrote a book. I think in the notes you were giving me and kind of led me down a rabbit hole. It was a guy that had been that wrote a book on some killings that happened here in the States that had a similar pattern as the Hinterkaifeck murders. And he thought what plausible theory is that the guy they suspected a German immigrant of doing these murders, and the murders actually stopped around 1919, and he was gone. They couldn't find him anywhere. So he was theorizing that maybe he went back to Germany. And again, the pattern of the murders that occurred here in the States were almost the same as the pattern of the Hinterkaifeck farm. So he was surmising, well, maybe it was.
Distinct.
And this was before anybody knew what a serial killer was. The term that was in use back then was called an alienist. So, nobody pieced together the killings here, but when they started piecing them together here in the U.S., that's when they stopped. And then a couple of years later, one shows up in Germany, which was kind of weird. And it was, that one. cases are actually solved. There's a lot of speculation. You just weave the web and see what sticks. That's what you do. I can actually see you doing this too.
There are times that I actually have done it.
You know, I think you need your own room to where you have your dry erase board on one side, and then you have your clear board on the other one to tape things to and put string on. I would actually build you this place.
I think if I did that, my family might actually be a little bit more concerned about me than they already are. Like, I got Daniel sitting right here. He can tell you the whole thing about the grocery list, because apparently I am now infamous for that.
For a grocery list?
Yes, for a grocery list. And it was a legitimate grocery list. I swear to God. Don't shake your head. I can see you over there. I was sitting, usually during my housework and everything, I have the ID channel playing in the background. And that day it was like a marathon of like Snapped or Women Who Kill or, you know, one of those shows. And he was actually running a little bit late that night. He didn't get home till like 8:30. So I'd already fed the tiny tyrant, got her to bed, and I sat down to make my grocery list for the next day. So when Daniel walks in the door, all he sees is me sitting there with this show on TV and jotting things down on a notepad. And he just stood there. He goes, "Did I do something wrong?"
God love him.
So yeah, if you ever see anybody talking about me in the grocery list, that's what they're referring to, because they don't believe me that it was actually just a grocery list.
I gotta say, that's actually very funny. It's similar to something that happened to me. I write short stories. I just write them for fun. But when I write mystery stories, you know, I do the whole clue thing. I make a list of who I want dead, and I make a list of the possible methods and the possible weapons. And so one day I left my list out, and my sister comes over, and she's looking at that going, "Please tell me these people are fake."
Please tell me this is fictional. Yeah, I told them every time they bring the grocery list up, I'm like, y'all know me. Y'all know I'm way too smart to ever put anything in writing.
Exactly. If it's in writing, you've already failed.
I mean, there was
committed to memory.
one of an interesting Forensic Files episode, because that's what I usually watch to go to sleep to, if that tells you anything about me.
Fun.
Yeah, Daniel's like, that's fun. But it was about this guy. It was a serial bomber and everything. But the way they actually found him was that he had jotted down on just, you know, one of those standard legal yellow pads. Mm-hmm. He had jotted down like the instructions and, you know, everything he needed for the bomb and everything. But then he tore that sheet off, you know, he disposed of it. They could never find that. But it still left the impressions of whatever writing utensil he used. So they got everything he wrote down just from that.
Oh, yeah. That is the impression. I mean, that trope has been used on a lot of detective TV, you know, but it's true. So many people forget that when you're writing on a notepad, you're leaving an impression. And it's not just one page. You leave it on several pieces of paper.
Depending on how hard you bear down, like, I mean, you might as well just burn the whole pad at that point.
I don't, you know, if I'm writing a note to somebody, I actually tear the piece of paper and I'll write it on a hard surface. Preferably my kitchen counter where it's granite so that there is no indentation. But that's just me.
Yeah,
I'm just careful, people. That's all.
I've got my little notebook and everything. My show notes is what I call them. And I swear to God, if I die and like police ever show up and they find this, they're going to have a lot of questions for Daniel. Mm-hmm. They're going to be like, okay, what was she doing?
Fear, I have no idea.
Yeah, he's just saying, he would just tell him, "Officer, I lived in fear. I have no idea what was going on."
I think, you know, if you get comfortable enough, which you will, with doing a podcast, I think you and Daniel should have a podcast. together.
I thought about having him on as like a guest speaker one night because like his favorite American, like kind of modern day, I guess he would qualify, serial
Modern
killer.
day?
Well, your favorite modern day one I think is Edmund Kemper, but his overall favorite, the one he finds the most fascinating, was H.H. Holmes.
The OG.
And there's actually a theory that he might have been Jack the Ripper.
Yeah, there's so many. Do you remember when the movie came out about the possibility that Jack the Ripper was actually the royal physician for the House of Windsor, for Queen Victoria? And I was like, whoa. That was pretty interesting. But
yeah, the most prominent theory was that Jack the Ripper was a doctor of some kind because of the precision of the cuts and everything, and the organs especially. Like, you would have to have specific knowledge at that time.
The way the bodies were cut, the knife that was what was used to cut was just so thin and precise that, yeah, it led people to believe that it might be a doctor with surgical instruments, or a fishing knife was the other possibility. But which kind of makes sense with the whole organ thing as well.
Yeah, there are going to be other cases that I've got like a laundry list of stuff that I want to go through, but I was going to actually tell the guys in chat and everything, if y'all want to start just throwing out names of like the cases that they want me to look into, and we'll see about covering them sometimes.
That would be fun. You could do a poll and suggest 4, and then whoever wins that poll, that's the one you cover.
Yeah, absolutely. I've even got 2 that happened. One of them basically almost right in my backyard, which I won't give a whole lot of details about where that is because obviously I piss off a lot of very unstable people on Twitter. So
yeah, you do.
I'll have to kind of hold off on a lot of details of that, but it is a case of a guy whose family actually used to go to church with us. So got him. And then there was a woman from Florida who was like meeting her ex-husband to, do the kid drop off and swap and everything. Her body was actually found in like an old shed and everything. And I pass it all the time going to the grocery store.
Ooh, that's kind of creepy.
So I like the ones, that people can give me like from kind of their state or their area or something too, like something that wouldn't be widely known. Like, yeah, I'm going to touch on the big ones. I mean, eventually I'll get around to, the top 3 is how I call them, just the Dahmer, Bundy, and Gacy. But just those kind of unheard of ones and that's the reason, like, I know here soon we're going to be wrapping up. That's the reason I want to do like an in memoriam at the end every time, because these were real people. These are real cases. This is not a TV show. This is not a dramatization. We're talking about actual living human beings whose lives were taken from them. And usually in the most brutal way you can imagine doing this to another person.
It is. Heather, it kind of sucks part of your soul out when you realize the capacity that human beings have for hurting each other.
And that's what I want people to understand about this show, because it's not just going to be like the sensationalism and the gore and everything. A lot of it I am going to delve into the psychology of these people, because that's always been my fascination with it, is why are you doing this? How can this ever be something that you consider doing to another living human being? It's the why and everything that's always gotten to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's, why would somebody go through? I mean, what is the motive, the method, why they chose that method, why they chose that particular victim? All of those, there is a psychology to it. And sometimes it's very garbled. It's not straightforward. sometimes it's all touched off by one innocent happening in their childhood that completely scrambles the brain and just sends them down this path.
Well, that lecture that Daniel took me to just last month, that's what that doctor had touched on. Everything. She's got like the 9 criteria, basically the list. And it all does go back to childhood. And then something happens and they kind of fetishize whatever that was in some way. And that just kind of warps the rest of their development and everything. And so everything from that point on kind of revolves around whatever catalyst that was.
And sometimes the catalysts just make absolutely no sense. It made sense to the killer, but those standing outside of that who don't have that kink in their brain, they just can't make it work, can't make it make sense.
Yeah, like one of them, Jerry Brudos, I think his name was. He was the shoe fetish killer, I think is what they called him. I'm not entirely sure. But his stemmed from, he had a very abusive mother and everything. And I think she had always wanted a daughter. And so one day when, he had stolen some, women's clothing and shoes and everything and went and showed his mother thinking that would make her happy. Well, she beat him senseless, and that was what started it.
Wow. That's so sad. Oh, well. Anyway, we're getting close to the end of the show, so I think this is a good time for us to memorialize those that were taken way too early. Back in 1922.
Did we lose Laura?
Laura?
Hold on, guys. We're going to do the memorial real quick. The husband, victim Andreas Gruber, was 63. Kazilia Gruber, the wife, 72. Victoria Gabriel, the widowed daughter, was 35. Victoria's children, the daughter Kazilia, 7. Joseph, the boy, was 2. And the live-in maid on her first day there, Maria Baumgardner, was 44. And we are not going to allow these people to be forgotten. Even though it was over 100 years ago, they were real people, real lives that was taken way too soon. And we want to make sure that they are always honored and remembered.
Thank you. That was very nice.
Sorry, I had like a coughing fit.
Oh,
my sinuses are killing me.
I'm telling you, I think this show should be you and Barbie and Ken. I swear, this would be so cool.
Oh, and what's funny is his first name actually is Kenneth.
Okay, that's awesome. I think y'all's handles are like my favorite over on Twitter. It's so cute.
Yeah, they kind of set off the leftist for me. I actually had someone in my mentions before we did all this, so complain about it.
Oh, for goodness sake. Anyway, well, I guess we're at the top of the hour, so why don't you tell us where we can find you?
Yeah, I'm Bumpstock Barbie on Twitter, X, whatever you call it. If y'all find me there, I actually have my Twitchy author page linked in my bio because you can see me on Twitchy too.
And and don't forget Bumpstock Ken. That's your other half. Yep. He also has an X account. So. Yeah. So those of you that don't follow.
You got to check in with him every so often just to make sure he's still alive.
I think I'm going to start setting in for these shows just as proof of life from now on.
Proof of life.
Kind of co-hosting, so y'all know. There'll be, some code words if I'm in trouble. I'll let y'all guys know.
Blink if you're a hostage. No, that's awesome. So you can find him at bumps.ken over on X as well. And I think you link him on your bio, don't you, Laura?
I don't think I have him linked, but I tag him constantly and stuff. So
yeah, so they're always there. So it's so cute when y'all talk to each other on X. I'm like, oh, that's so adorable. Okay, and
in person.
Also, you can find Laura. Before I forget, I'm going to give the plug. She is doing this show. Today was our launch, and we will be doing it every other Wednesday, correct?
Every other Wednesday, yes. Unless something changes, and then obviously we'll post about that. And
okay, so look for Talk Murder to Me in 2 weeks at 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. God's time zone, which is Central.
The correct time zone.
The correct time zone.
The only time zone. Aggie, where can folks find you? You haven't said that yet.
Oh, well, you can find me at Aggie Rican and at Aggie the Barkeep. Those are over on X. You can find me. Oh, God, the list is so long now. 8:30 p.m. Eastern Tuesdays doing the Cocktail Lounge with the ever-suave Brad Slager. 8:30 p.m. Eastern Friday nights doing He Said, She Said with our awesome producer, Rick. Twice a month now doing Talk Murder to Me with our beloved Laura at 9 p.m. Eastern on every other Wednesday. Last Wednesday of every month, we do Toxic Masculinity. That's at 8 p.m. Eastern, where the guys, G, Rick, Andrew, and Orty get together to talk about guy stuff. We host a Babe of the Month, and I bring the drinks for the evening. And last but certainly not least, we have now launched a monthly book podcast. Jeff and I take turns hosting it, and it's right now it's on the second Monday, but after this second Monday in June, we will be moving it to the first Monday. So it's also at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, which everybody is now dubbing as Aggie time.
Well, that's because until this one, pretty much every single one of your shows starts at 8:30 Eastern. So
this was not my idea, but anyway,
it's never your idea.
It just worked out that way. It just worked out that way. I don't know what happened.
Unfortunately, I can't make the same joke with you I make with Orty because it sounds sexist, so I won't say it. With Orty,
I'm Hispanic. It's okay.
No, with Orty, I always joke that he needs to get back out on the corner, but you know.
Oh my God. Okay.
That's why I said I couldn't say that about you. And then you're like, I'm Hispanic. It's okay. So you brought it on yourself.
All right. Well, this was awesome, Laura. This was really cool. You need to send me more homework more often.
Okay, I'll go ahead and pick the next one for 2 weeks from now, and we'll get it going.
That sounds good. Thanks so much, guys, for tuning in.
All right, folks.
I might not sleep tonight.
That's gonna do it for tonight's lineup. There is no Rick and Orty. He has to get up early, so we're closing down for the night. I'll be back tomorrow afternoon doing the Rick Robinson Show live right here on KLRNradio.com. Thanks for hanging out. Chat Lives Matter night. Take care, everybody.
And thanks, Daniel, for tuning in with us.
And he was so fucking sure he had the right. But he's ugly, and I'm glad